Hi Stories channel here.
We cover a myriad of different shows. Today we'll be taking a look at 2020 Korean horror series by Netflix called Go Damn. Episode 1, Crack. The series starts off with the first episode in which we see a girl sitting in her class listening to a boring lecture about capitalism. On the empty desk in front of her, a flower lay on top. The girl asks for a break and walks outside in the empty corridor and passes the photographs of two girls. Suddenly, one of the photos smiles and stares in her direction. Meanwhile, the lights of the corridor start flickering and the girls get scared. She hears a noise behind her, but she ignores it and walks into the restroom where she bites her nails in nervousness. After finding an empty cubicle, she goes inside to light up a cigarette, but a thud scares her. After the silence, she tries to light it up again, but the bangs become consistent and her fright rises by every second. She bites her nails and afterwards hunches down on the floor to take a peek. Suddenly, the cubicles start opening and closing by themselves, and in a flash, she notices feminine hair disappearing under a toilet lid. Shaken to the bone, the girl recoils and composes herself. After a passage of time, she lowers down again where a tear slides on her face. In the next flash, a bloodied face of a girl appears who's hanging upside down. The monstrous girl slides the student away and the episode ends in the blood-splattered bathroom where the student is killed. In the last scene, the face of the girl in the second photograph also begins to smile. Episode 2, Destination. The second chapter begins at 3:29 a.m. where a sleepy taxi driver drives along the road. After a failed attempt to turn on his stereo, the guy parks to the side of a blockade and dozes off. As the clock strikes 3:30, a girl with long hair sits in his car and asks him to leave for Samyang Motel at Ilsan. The taxi driver searches it on the maps, but it doesn't appear to be there. Nevertheless, he starts the drive as the girl states she knows the way. They travel along the deserted road and the driver tries to turn on the stereo again, but it doesn't even budge. At one point, the girl asks him to turn right. The driver starts arguing as there's no road on the right and keeps driving straight ahead. Their argument intensifies and the driver calls her crazy. Suddenly, during the drive, long, slender fingers with black nails crawl to the driver's throat and he instantly looks back to find the cab empty. Fear grips him and suddenly the girl in her white dress springs up in front of his car. The driver screeches to a halt and lands on his head on the steering wheel. As he lifts his head slowly, the girl disappears and reappears in his back seat. But upon revealing her face, we witness that she's deprived of eyeballs and her sockets start bleeding. The driver screams in fright and tries to escape, but unfortunately the door doesn't open and he gets paralyzed. Furthermore, the witch's hand slowly crawls around him and between the fingers are ripped out eyeballs staring at the man. As his horrendous shrieks die out, the taxi turns back on again along with the systems. We then witness the driver to be dead and his eyeballs plucked out. The car speeds up into the night and the eyeballs lie on the cold asphalt. Episode 3, Special Guest. The episode flips off with a live stream of a social media influencer named Se Ram who welcomes everyone on her channel. After telling everyone about her new house that she's moved in, Se Ram happily converses. Suddenly, her plush toy falls down from the showcase behind her. Her followers comment about the occurrence, but she doesn't take much notice and just picks it back up. Afterwards, she continues her broadcast again, and this time, a book starts sliding. The followers point it out again, and she starts getting scared. Some of them comment that it's a hoax, but it turns out that she's actually freaked out, as noises can be heard around the room as well. In a hurry and tense state, she ends the broadcast and states she'll leave the room and will be back later. As the broadcast ends, it is revealed that it was really a hoax and she was planning and acting on all of that. Unfortunately, she misses out on ending the camera and her fans catch her calling her friend and laughing about how amazing and real the prank looked. Se Ram enjoys her moments of triumph and proceeds to take a selfie for the thumbnail, but as she applies a cat filter on her face, several other invisible filters start to apply around her. Se Ram now gets frightened in actuality as snarls arise around her and suddenly her neck and body start to crack. An invisible force smashes her head on the keyboard and it starts to bleed. The cameras then show another Se Ram who kills the previous one after banging her head repeatedly on the table. In the last scene, she pushes her away and sits in front of the screen. Se Ram now starts the broadcast with the exact same energy and the episode ends. Episode 4, Curiosity. In the same school from the first episode, two girls watch a video of a demonic creature and then run inside to grab their books. On their way up to the stairs on level 3-2, one girl sprains her ankle and sends her friend named Min Young ahead to bring the books. Min Young walks into the class and opens her friend's locker where she gets scared by a small, horrifying doll. After a sigh of relief, she enjoys the prank and walks outside in the corridor when suddenly Min Young hears a commotion behind her. Her eyes go wide in terror as a corpse of a girl starts twisting in front of her and her back cracks to attain a demonic morphology. The demon crawls on all fours towards her and chases her down the corridor. Frightened to death, Min Young runs down the stairs and darts endlessly but always ends up on the second floor. Meanwhile, her friend waits for her but there is no signs of Min Young. Back at the stairs, we witness Min Young extremely exhausted after running down hundreds of steps. In the interim, the monster approaches her as she frightenedly leans against the wall, and the demon nears her face and her golden pupils start multiplying in her eyes like a virus. In the meantime, Min Young's friend gets up to look for her, but the monster also attacks her, and the chapter ends there with a blackout. Episode 5, Red Shoes. This particular episode shows a student going through a group chat while her classmates discuss the death of their fellow named Jin Young, who died by jumping in front of the truck and her lower body got cut off. As they discuss the horrible aftermath, the teacher arrives in the class and starts the lecture where she speaks about her death and considers it an accident. Likewise, she tells the students that they must not worry about it. Upon hearing that, the class gets relaxed except for one student. The lecture is concluded and the girls start to leave the class while the lonely one sits in her chair. Whilst using the phone, she goes under much consideration and leaves the group chat. Meanwhile, the camera shows us a teacher in her cabinet. She receives a text from her student who wants to talk about Jin Young. Therefore, she walks to the classroom in her red shoes and enters the room to find the girl hunkered down while covering her face. The teacher inches closer to her and tries to talk to her about the matter, but suddenly notices that the girl is covered in blood. Upon looking below, she notices the girl's legs to be spilling with blood. As the teacher gets back up, she's suddenly struck with terror as the student reveals her face to be Jin Young. The half-dead girl lifts up her chopped body and attacks the teacher, stating that these pair of legs are no good for her. Afterwards, we witness the witch limping and staggering across the corridor while hosting the teacher's lower body and her red shoes. Episode 6, Dimension. The scenario flips off in an elevator where a guy can be seen through the CCTV clip. The young lad suddenly covers his ears and his situation gets worse as he's pushed to a wall and murdered by an invisible force. Later, the detectives can be seen watching the video and glimpsing towards the rotten corpse of a boy that lay in the elevator. As they walk out, a man comes running towards the detective named Ja Pil and offers him a post from the boy's online account about interdimensional travel via elevator. The detective is intrigued, and later that night he strolls into the building to test it. After getting inside the lift, Ja Pil follows the instructions on the page and presses 2, 4, 6, 7, 9 simultaneously. Afterwards, the elevator starts working on itself and Ja Pil follows the instructions further and goes to 2nd, 10th, 4th, and 6th floor respectively. As the elevator reaches the 4th floor, the door opens to a completely dark and blank space. The guy stares in amazement, but receives a sudden shock as the vacant darkness gets replaced by his own reflection. With that, the door closes and suddenly a hand appears out of thin air and presses for another floor. The lift now reaches the 10th floor, and the door opens to reveal a girl who has materialized in the elevator as well. Ja Pil tries to communicate with her, but suddenly her body starts to crack and twist. In the interim, Ja Pil covers his ears in agony when suddenly the girl turns around to reveal her face. A package of horrendously overlapped skin compromises the face of the girl, and it horrifies him. He retreats to the floor, and the elevator starts dropping down dozens of floors in the negative. Meanwhile, the demonic woman reaches for Ja Pil, and he starts to bleed. Afterwards, she smashes his head against the wall repeatedly until he bleeds out badly. With the extreme brutality, Ja Pil dies while the CCTV shows an invisible force slamming his head in the wall. In the final moments of the episode, we see him coming to the crime scene, and during the analysis, his assistant remarks that the victim has the same clothes as him. But Ja Pil scoffs it away. On the other hand, we witness Min Young and her friend entering the elevator to try out the interdimensional travel, and with that, the episode concludes. Episode 7, Threshold. The chapter starts with a happy family where the kid gets tripped by a door sill. The family consoles him as the wife gets ready to meet their mother. The guy sees them off to the door, and before leaving, his wife warns him not to take the paper talisman off the bedroom wall. The husband agrees, and the family leaves. In the upcoming scenario, we witness him waking up and finding strands of female hair popping out of the door sill. He pries it away, and suddenly feminine shrieks echo around the room. He falls back in fright and looks around in astonishment, but there's nothing to be seen. The scene now shifts to the night where the guy returns home drunk with sleepiness. Upon entering the house, he rips off the talisman and throws it away. Afterwards, he sinks in bed, but weird things start to happen as blood starts oozing from the door sill. Moreover, body parts including feet and hands emerge from various hidden places, and the hands start crawling on the wall. A few drops of blood fall on the guy's face, and he suddenly wakes up to witness the horrifying sight of the assembly of the human monster. The creepy creature forms in front of him and proceeds to attack him. The guy falls to the ground and staggers back while begging for mercy, but the demonic creature approaches him threateningly and slashes hard across his face. Later, the camera pans through the messy room onto the slashed guy, and the episode ends right there. Episode 8, Birth. In a dark and dingy basement, we witness a shaman walking down the steps and feeding shitty food to a child in captivity. Later, the story tells us the shamans use children for black magic and deprive them of food and eventually kill them for the spirit. The scene then shows the evil woman who prays to her spirit, and her body starts contorting. Afterwards, she walks to the basement to feed the kid, but instead of giving her the meat, she lures the innocent starving child to the barrel and brutally stabs her to death. That engages an incident where the shaman is overtaken and her eyes turn horrifyingly golden. Meanwhile, the barrel's ashes turn black. The scene now shifts to an open where the woman buries a pair of feet in the ground and starts laughing menacingly. Afterwards, another woman meets her and orders her husband's death through the black magic. She even offers some money and asks to get it done as soon as possible. While the evil shaman makes the deal, the ash barrel behind her starts shaking violently. The camera then shows us an innocent, grieving mother who comes looking for her missing child. As the heartbroken mother requests the shaman to take a look for her kid, the stuff around the room starts shaking violently while the evil woman herself gets the simultaneous shocks. The situation starts to aggravate as the grief-stricken mother pleads for her child, and the barrel and the cabinet start causing the commotion. For her own safety, the shaman puts all the blame on the mother and shoves her out of the temple and cold-heartedly orders her to never come back. Later that night, she wakes up and walks to her room to find it completely trashed up. She drops to her knees and prays to the spirit, but she gets punished by agony and her body starts to contort. Under extreme difficulty, she crawls to the black ash and starts eating it, but the agonizing pain takes over her. Suddenly, she senses something in her belly and rips the robe to reveal a baby's face inside her womb. The kid brutally pierces her belly, and the evil shaman's life comes to an end. As the body drops to the floor, the newborn baby with blistered skin slithers out and starts crawling away. On the other hand, we see a woman who has hanged herself with a tree, and the camera focuses on a plant erupting from among the stones. With that scene, the season comes to an end. Thanks for watching, guys!